Okay guys, we're going to take the Riva out for a spin. This is a very unique bike. Very unique. It's got a fan, but it's air cooled. The fan is for the carburetor, but the most unique thing is that it's hydraulic adjusted valves. I've never seen that in any other scooter. If you know any other scooter that has that, post in the comments below. I'd be very curious to see if there's anything that has this. I think Yamaha did this intentionally to compete with the Honda Elite 150 that required a little bit more work with the choke and everything. I think they wanted to create a seamless experience. And 40 years ago, perhaps this bike was that. Nowadays, you can get these for a bargain. So let's get that key, tiny little key. And hopefully it's not going to leave me stranded like it did last time. You know, I did adjust the carburetor, or I did adjust the rear suspension, but it's so soggy. And I did fill the gas tank with gas. So let's go for a spin. This is a 40-year-old bike. It's incredible. Look, you can get Chinese bikes for the price of this. This thing is actually quite torquey. It's a torquey little bike. It feels heavier than the Elite 150. And the Elite 150, back in the day, it was just, the 80s Elites were just dominating the scooter world. And they still dominated over this bike. But Yamaha had to do something. They first came out with a scooter that was more moped than scooter, but the Riva 50, I believe, was the first scooter by Yamaha, the first real one. And then they came out with a 180 and then the 200. The 180, the one that I have here, it has a couple of versions. They had the deluxe version, and then they had the Z version, and then the 180. I have the Z version. The Z version basically means there's improvements to it. And the deluxe had digital gauges and everything. And I like the Riva with the digital gauges and the gold color. It's pretty trick. But Yamaha had to do something in order to compete with the incredibly popular Elite 150. Squirrely right now just keeps talking about how he loves the Elite 150. You know, he's got the pop-up headlight and everything, and it is a great bike. You know, I had a Elite 150 and I thought it was so good. It felt lighter than this. The engine was more traditional on the Elite 150 than this. If you look at this engine, it's similar to modern scooters with the cylinders pointing to the front. But here's the thing. This bike, this took me by surprise because nobody talks about this. This thing has got self-adjusting hydraulic valves. That's incredible. I've never seen that on any other scooter. Bikes that have self-adjusting hydraulic valves, I think that's the term. Don't quote me on it. The Goldwing. Not even the early Goldwings. The one that I had was not self-adjusting. And then the GL 1200, those are self-adjusting. Harleys are self-adjusting. And makers don't usually make bikes with those type of valves because it's not cost effective. Completely over-engineer this. So, you know, back in the day, this thing must have been a hoot. It was like smooth and everything. Now with 40 years old, the main problem is really the carburetor. The carburetors on these are just so finicky. They're overly complex. So they have a solenoid, two solenoids, one for cold and one for, I believe, warm. And depending on the temperature, it kicks in and out. And also, this bike is air-cooled. And it's air-cooled, but it's got a fan for the carb, so you don't hydro-lock the carb. I actually disconnected it. It doesn't do any damage. But the Elite 150, that was a liquid-cooled bike, so I think better for commuting. The 10-inch wheels make it sprightly, but you feel the heft. It's, you know, it's got a little bit of heft to it. Now, I read online that this particular bike will get up to 60 to 65 miles per hour, and that is fast. I don't think I'd like to go that fast on a bike with 10-inch wheels. Let's look at this bike. This bike is incredibly unique. So, missing the blinker lens, and these things are quite expensive to buy, so you have to keep that in mind. And then you have this. This is something that Yamaha was thinking about even back in the day. Look at it, New Jersey, 1985 inspected. That's kind of cool. It's the drum front, gold wheels, but look at that fork. And notice that right here, you have no swing arm or no fork on the right side. And it's that beautiful 80s gold wheel. And look at that gold piping here. And notice that this is a very unique thing with the Riva. The front fender and this plastic are integrated. I'm not actually sure that's a great thing, but it's incredibly unique. Not only that, so the front over there, there's no radiator. That's kind of protecting the housing. And then if you look down here, you see that piece of plastic? It's like a slanted piece of plastic. So any debris or dirt or sludge coming from that front wheel gets diverted to the left side. That's quite a bit of an engineering thing that Yamaha did. Around here, I think I'm the only one with a Riva. You know, a lot of people just get Chinese bikes. And look, glass. The Elite 150 also had glass. It's got a little tiny windscreen. Doesn't really help too much. And of course you got that foot brake. Oh, look at this. This is a little bit... Yeah, I forgot to put this on. I'm gonna have to... So I left it kind of loose so I can mess with the carb if I have to. But this one is a Riva 180Z. Z is for improved version. It's got foot pegs for your passenger if you carry passengers, and it's actually quite strong for a little scooter. It is quite powerful. And coming over here, you see, like, another thing with the Bodywork, everything is enclosed. You can't even check the dipstick. Every other scooter I've ever seen, the dipstick is easy to access. The airbox, easy to access. This one is completely covered. Right about here is where your dipstick is. Your air filter is here. It's traditionally normal, but you have to remove this piece of plastic in order to get to it. This one also has a kickstand, which is good, but it's very robust. Everything about this bike, they did make it quite sturdy. Sure, this thing has got some age on it. You know, it's a bargain bike at this point. And let's check out the carrying capacity. You put the little key here, the seat pops off to the side, and then you have a battery. You have a bunch of starter solenoids, relays, and your gas tank is right here. And traditionally, you know, back in the day, they put the foot peg or the rear brake in the floorboard. The floorboard on this is not particularly high. You know, that's one thing that Yamaha does, is make high floorboards. This one's pretty low. The weight on it, it is kind of, you feel the weight on it. You know, it's not like you get on a PCX. The PCX is like a bicycle weight compared to this. And the PCX, the Honda PCX, is about the same speed. And it gets a 20 more miles per gallon, I believe, than this. This gets about 80. In the 80s, that was a gas crisis. That's why you see a lot of scooters from Honda, the Elites. They were extremely popular because of that gas crisis. And of course, this is in competition for that commuter crown that they had at the time. And look at this. No storage capacity whatsoever. And the only thing that you have is this terrible little flat pocket that you can't really use it to store anything. Back in the day, these scooters really weren't considered utility scooters. They were more just commuters and fun bikes. Plus, it's got a luxurious item. If you hit horn when it's off, you can't see it, but actually you see the letters light up on the ignition. That took me by surprise, because that is a luxury. So let's go ahead and start the bike and let's go for a little spin. Now, I'm still testing out this particular bike because, you know, I've been working on it. I mean, I split the engine and I never did that before. So that's another thing about the Riva. The Riva, you can remove the carburetor without removing the engine, but it's a whole lot easier to remove the engine. It goes from a hard bike to work on to completely easy if you remove the engine. And no valves to adjust. And as long as you ride it, you don't have to adjust the carburetor. It just works. The petcock was all gummed up on this. I think that's really why it wasn't getting fuel. It wasn't so much the carb. The carb, by the way, also has this little thing. It's a different needle because it's overly complex and over-engineered. It's got another needle for low-speed idling, and that's the cause of most of the starting problems on these particular bikes. It's that little screw, that little needle that people don't clean out because it's kind of difficult to clean out. What a lot of people do on these bikes, they'll ditch the stock carb almost immediately and put a traditional carb, a 28 millimeter, I believe, and then you basically don't have the issue with the two solenoids and the vacuum and all of that. You basically tie the vacuums together so you're not messing with that. Yeah, turning on this thing is quite sharp. That's the beauty of the little 10-inch tires. You know, a lot of people don't like them. I prefer the 14s that were on the PCX, but it takes a while to get used to the sharp turning of this thing. It is quite fun. You know, when you ride around and you ride around your neighborhood, a little scooter like this is just so much fun. It's so nice to have fun at low speeds. Yesterday, there was a scooter delivery rider that got killed. He ran, according to the story, he ran a red light and got killed. This particular bike really likes it at about 45 miles per hour. That's a good speed. Another thing I will mention is that the way they set up this bike, the carbs and everything, it's not a super quick launch. You know, when you have a scooter like a PCX or whatever, Elite, it's a quicker launch. And they're quicker, but at the same time, they're not as stable as this at speed. Like, this thing is quite stable once it gets up to working speed. But the Elite 150, it was snappy off the throttle. I mean, it surprised a lot of cars and bikes. And they also had a Riva 200. So they had that 50, they had the 125, they had the 180, and then the 200. And the 200 is the most sought after. I think it's the rarest. I've never seen one. And it's the less complex version of the Riva. So a lot of the bugs were sorted out. It does make sense to go to 200. This is essentially a 200. Okay, we are back at Garage.squid, and the little Riva. I am so surprised, man. This thing did so well. This thing did so well. 1984. I cannot believe how good it rides. Oh man, I think it's ready for a bikes and coffee next week. Well guys, thanks for watching. I appreciate it. I'll see you in the next video. Thumbs up if you like the video. Bye bye.